Good afternoon for the New Zealand viewers, and good evening for those people who are watching me probably in America, mainly Florida. I'm Danny DeHeck. I'm, for the use of a better word, the head investigator for a team of people called the Avengers. And the Avengers do open source intelligence investigations. And on the 1st of September, we started investigating a company called Goliath Ventures Inc. And the guy that ran it was Christopher Delgado. We've uncovered absolutely amazing. We've currently got about 330 people in our database. We are getting involved now in the recovery process, not claiming we can help people recover money, but by gathering intel and giving it to the receivers, judges, and lawyers who are actually lapping up our data that we've been collecting for the last 6 months and now using it to actually do criminal investigations of their own into the people that I believe are called co-conspirators. So tonight or today or this afternoon, wherever you're calling from, we've got a shocker. Now, this is actually going to become a series of videos that myself and my Avengers are putting together on each and every person that we believe are a co-conspirator, and took $328 million from mum and dad investors. They wiped out people's 401ks, they built trust with people, and then they fleeced them. And it wasn't just Christopher Delgado or Nick Petrillo, which is his partner in crime, who actually did this. And my job and my obligation in life at the moment is to head down, bum up, and provide you the evidence that we've been collecting for the last 6 months. So the first person in this series that we're going to expose is Steve Davis. Steve Davis was a fireman. He was in the community. He was going into, dangerous situations. People that he was in charge of trusted him. Currently, we've got about 5 or 6 firemen that have invested heavily into Goliath Ventures simply because of their association with Steve Davis. And we're here to expose you, Steve. We know Steve's watching. I have given him a right of reply, and we've heard nothing. He's hiding. He's in a bit of a predicament now because he's trying to say I'm a victim. We know that he's got a German citizenship. We do know that he had a house heavily mortgaged because he mortgaged it to the hills so he could invest in Goliath Ventures himself. And they do this sort of stuff so they can say they're victims. And basically, it would be fair to say before he come into Goliath, he had no money. And at one stage there, you would see him with the Goliath team sitting there smoking cigars like he's a friggin' millionaire rock star. He has this brand, which I absolutely can't stand, called the Alpha Club, where it's a male-dominated thinking, where strong males dominate society. And he's been YouTubing, he's been social, he's even published a book, for God's sake, about himself. Now, if you do a bit of research about his book, it's quite funny because he's bought himself a publishing company, and that's what we're going to look at today. We've received amazing intel and statements that will be used in the courtroom if needed from individuals that basically have seen him face to face. This is a shocker because these guys haven't learned from what they got taught when they grew up. They have seen a guy, Christopher Delgado, practicing and training them how to fleece people from their money. And once that Ponzi scheme collapsed, they have just shifted their knowledge base over to new opportunities and started doing the same thing all over again. These individuals are the bottom feeders on the planet. They are the lowlifes in society. They will climb over anybody to get where they want to be. They will ridicule people who are calling them out. They haven't showed any remorse for their role in promoting one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in America. But we're going to hold them accountable because often I say to people, I'm Danny DeHeck, I'm here to name and shame anyone running or promoting a Ponzi scheme or a scam. These individuals need to be held accountable. And that's why we're going to be doing this series of articles to show this. And this is the first of the articles. We're actually going to do another article about Steve Davis. Because Steve, we have gone into all your companies and we've gone through them hoping that the investigators will do the same And we are actually working with the investigators. We've gone through all your companies. We know whereabouts you claim to be living at the moment, and we're just handing it all over to them on a platter. And we're going to build a timeline of companies that you've registered. We're going to show them the houses, the properties that you've purchased and you've sold. We're going to show people how you've rented out places that you shouldn't have rented out because you're in breach of your own contract. We're going to go back to the banks where you've got the mortgages and show them the receipts. We're going to do our best to ruin you because you have ruined the lives of many hardworking individuals. Fireman is at the top of the list. I got a phone call from one individual. Two individuals were on the phone call, and they both put in $100,000 of their money that they've saved up because you told them to do it. There's another guy out there, which we won't name, $500,000. How many firemen do you know have $500,000 to put into a high-risk investment where they were promised to get 3 or up to 8% return per month? Why would someone put over their 401k to a scheme? And we've even heard that the Goliath boys were laughing how stupid they felt these investors were in their closed groups, because we've got whistleblowers in those groups now telling us information, and they've heard those conversations that you guys have been having while you're fagging away on cigars. So let me get on script now. That was just my personal rant. The moment a Ponzi scheme starts collapsing, watch who tries to rebrand themselves as the hero. And I have to stay on script because I keep thinking of things like the Business Insider advert. So when Goliath started collapsing, Steve Davis thought, I know what I'll do. I'll double down on credibility. And he paid for a sponsored advert with the Business Insider magazine. Now today, for the first time, we've actually managed to find that article in the Wayback Machine, and we'll show you that. The blog begins a new series exposing the people who promoted, endorsed, or helped give credibility to Goliath Ventures Inc. Christopher Delgado has now been charged by the US government in connection with an alleged $328 million Ponzi scheme. And now, I finished my coffee, I'm just going to have a slurp of it. And Steve Davis was listed on Goliath's own website as part of the team, serving as the Director of Administration. Now think about that for a while. How can these, people have had they've been in an official hearing, and they got to be able to ask questions to the judge and the receivers and the lawyers who are going after all these guys. And a lot of the questions is anyone else going to be held accountable? Is Nick Petrillo going to be charged? And they didn't say no, but they certainly know. But I can tell you that I'm 98% sure other people will be charged. And that's because when I talked to the head investigator from Homeland Security, who this case, we instigated it, told me that the investigation has just started. And that was after he rang me up. And he said to me, Danny, we need to ask you a question. How did you know about Christopher's arrest before we did? That's because we have fingers in a lot of pies, and my team of Avengers are friggin' amazing. And we can do things quicker than a lot of law enforcement who have to wait to do things. I was going to say properly, but we do things properly. So let's carry on script. Stephen Davis wasn't just floating around the edges. We've seen him at Goliath events, photographed with the Goliath team, which we'll show you, and tied to the company public-facing credibility machine. So he was part of the endorsement crew. And also he was ridiculing us. We've even got a YouTube video out there where we rang him up on the day, and he just tried to take the mickey out of me, wouldn't answer the questions, and was basically an arrogant prat. While all of this was happening, he was also building another company called Choice Press, his own publishing business, and they published books. I don't know why anybody would get involved in advertising publishing services because I don't know if you're aware of it, but I'm one of the biggest whistleblowers on the Pakistani software houses. And I've shown probably about 1,500 websites that are out there offering publishing services, which even ran out of Texas mainly, but all over the world. And they're all ran by Pakistani people that will offer to ghostwrite your book and then never deliver the product and string you along for years and fleece you of lots and lots of money, which is serious. Anyway, he decided it would be a good idea to start up a publishing house called Choice Press. And if you want to go and have a look at that, it's choice-press.com. And we will show you that in a minute. So that's his own publishing business. But do you think a fireman is really clever enough to run his own company by himself? Or do you think a fireman that is now pushing and promoting a Ponzi scheme that's got all this money coming to him because he's promoting Goliath Ventures decided that he would start up his own business? That's what's happened. So there's serious concerns have now been raised about the way it was being operated, and we've got the receipts to prove this. In this live, we're going to follow the evidence. We're going to look at how Davis represented himself as a trusted former fire chief. Now, that's a big thing, being a fire chief. Now, he isn't like, I went to Orlando and I stood outside the fire brigade and I was going to go in there and say, do you know Steve Davis? But I don't think he was actually Orlando's fire chief. But I do believe there was some sort of like bushwhacker department in the What's, and he may have been the chief there. Haven't quite nailed that one yet. But him being a fire chief isn't really my point. The point is he was in an elevated position in the fire brigade. After being in there for 20 years, he did go up the ranks. So he had a lot of respect in the fire brigade. And you see this with all these individuals that were involved with Goliath Ventures. When Christopher was out there scouting for people to align with, he was looking for people that had communities around them. One comes to mind is Punit Shaw, a real estate broker. He was part of, I think, Remax. Then you've got Tomo, who was part of his rejuvenation clinics. He had a community around him, and that's what Christopher was very, very good at doing. He looked for people that had people associated to him that they could use that trust that they built with people and then say, hey, mate, I've got an opportunity of a lifetime. So anyone else that has dealings with Steve Davis who had been coerced into getting involved in Goliath Ventures, we still actively want to speak to you. It will be anonymous, but we'd like to know what he said, any screenshots, any encouraging words, or any pressure he may have put on you to invest. We would like to gather that information because we're going to go deep into everybody that was, in my opinion, a co-conspirator to helping Goliath Ventures grow to what it was. And also, I'm just going to say it now, is Goliath Ventures was a $328 million Ponzi scheme. That's because that's all the money they brought in. But unfortunately, Goliath Ventures has also left a trail of debt behind it. And it could be a $500 million disaster. So because we know we've heard of airline companies that were owed $723,000, I don't know why these companies aren't coming forward. There was also catering companies that weren't paid and all sorts of things. Anyway, let's not get into it. So let's carry on. I said, now that credibility helped him move inside Goliath world. So he used his own credibility as a fire chief to move inside Goliath's own world, and how similar pressure tactics appeared to have followed him into his own business ventures. So you would look at it and you would think, wow, that's interesting. Some of the parallels that are happening with his own business venture, you won't believe when you hear this. One of the most disturbing examples involved a potential publishing customer who was already struggling financially. Instead of stepping backwards, Davis allegedly encouraged him to look at using his home equity to fund the book project. So you want your book published, you can't afford it because it's going to cost you billions and zillions of dollars through Choice Press. And Steve Davis encouraged him to use the equity in his house to fund the book project. Now, we know through Goliath, through the people that we've been dealing with in Goliath, that they did the same thing. They encouraged people to find money from places you wouldn't normally get it, maybe your 401k, maybe savings that you had locked up in investments, And also, a lot of the people we're talking to have actually mortgaged their house. So there's no doubt in my mind that Steve Davis is now telling people to mortgage their house to get their book written. It's disgusting stuff. And Steve, I know that you're listening to me now because I've given you notice that we were going live. Now, you act like the man about town when I rang you last time. I'm not going to ring you this time, but in the chat room right now, I've actually pasted the link where you can actually join me on the show right now. You can, if you're using an iPhone, if you can afford one of those now, you can actually just call up via your iPhone following the link, and you can give us your right of reply that you seem to have ignored when we sent it out to you the other day. So this is about accountability. If people use their reputation to help sell trust around Goliath Ventures, then they need to answer for it. And if those same tactics are now showing up elsewhere, the public deserve to know. Now, we've done a bit of a funny photo here, but we have actually been following Steve Davis for some time. And the book Alone in the Fire, Steve Davis book, he's actually tried to promote it as much as he can. Now, if you go to Choice, let's go Choice. I can't even spell Choice today. Choice Press Publishing. There we go. So this is the website. This is Steve Davis's business. Now, as far as I'm concerned, he probably owns 100% of the business now. He started off owning 60% of the business, but people now don't want anything to do with him, so they've basically left him to it. And you can actually see that he's actually done a publishing deal with Jonathan Mason. So Jonathan Mason is the guy that believes there's $1 billion worth of crypto locked up in 6 different wallets for Goliath. Trust us, Jonathan. We have actually put your details in front of the receivers because they're interested in talking to you. No doubt you would have already got a phone call. We did give them your phone number as well. And the other one here, as you can see, Alone in the Fire book by Steve Davis. So these books, just for if you're thinking about buying them, haven't been written by these individuals. They've used a ghost writer. Now, if I ever get a book written, I promise you I'll be using a ghost writer as well. I think it's a fantastic way of them interviewing you and you telling your story and have it professionally written. So I'm not knocking that, but don't think they sat down there and so I don't know anything about the other Passing Down the Legend Journal. That's by Steve Davis. You can buy that as well. But these books you can actually find on Amazon. And out of interest, with the Steve Davis book that we're focusing on today, it is listed on Amazon. It's had 7 reviews last time I looked. 2 of the reviews are 1-star reviews, and they're not mine. So it's not even a really good book, unfortunately. But Tomo has also produced a book, and now Tomo's has broken away from this brand, and he's decided to market his own book. Now, hopefully somebody might give me a link to Tomo's book, because that would be quite interesting. Anyone that's got the link to Tomo's book, if you could chuck it up into Signal, that would be awesome. Now, first of all, we're going to just quickly look at some of the individuals that were hanging around. Now, I'm just going to give you a bit of a timeline, and it's probably better if I just go back on script here for a bit, well, off script, just so you know what happened with Goliath Ventures. Now, we started investigating on the 1st of September. Now, November, October, I don't even know the months of the year, but December, January, hope I got that right. Now, in October, they were told that they were going to get dividends, and they all had set up their own companies underneath Goliath Ventures. And they were told that every month that Goliath Ventures was going to pay their own LLC companies, and then they would distribute the money. So when people started not getting paid was around October. And they were told by powers that be that they must pay their downlines first before they take any money. So that's why in October people started saying, some were saying we were getting paid, and we were doing research and we were showing that some people were getting paid and some people weren't. And then when people contacted us saying that they've told me that they're going to hyper compound our money, that was a new word for me at the time, we decided to find out if we could put pressure on them. So we went to a few celebrities that invested, and we told them, the celebrities told Goliath that they were going to expose them under their celebrity names if they didn't get paid. And a few of them actually did get paid because we never heard from them again. That was part of the deal, I believe. Anyway, October, November, no one was getting paid. Now, the shocker was in December. So in December, they were going to hold a big party. Off the top of my head, I think it was the 12th of December. This wasn't just any old party. Jason Derulo was playing. They had no expense spared. We believe it was a $5 million Christmas party. Now, people, because we were blowing up the fact that this was a Ponzi scheme, were too afraid to go. So they got, on the 2nd of September, they wrote out a letter. Christopher wrote it out, and it wasn't from the normal MailChimp database that we'd seen him doing previously. It was like a new MailChimp database, which means it was probably done remotely out of the office, our investigation. Long story short, he assured people on the December the 15th and 18th that payments would resume to normal. So that meant there was a small window where they either trusted that repayments would resume to normal, but on I think it was the 10th of December, they held this big lavish party. So that meant that people that were doubting were just told that everything's going to resume to normal, but come along, have a great big celebration with us. So we actually had we had 2 Avengers go to that Christmas party, and we actually had people inside snuck into the venue and took videos of everybody in the venue. We also had people go into the venue before they held the party, taking photos, and we've had a lot of people provide us a lot of intel. Anyway, long story short, on the 16th of December, Christopher went to Dubai. We didn't see him anymore, and they had people within Goliath Ventures doubting that they were real, true, and genuine. And at that time, we believe Vince Garata left Goliath Ventures. He didn't want anything to do with it. And we know he's gone off to, I know he's gone off to a production company wanting to tell his story, or a production company wants to tell his story, claiming that Vince is some sort of victim, because he's devastated that he was promoting Goliath Ventures. And we'll do a story on him as well. And now he's claiming he's sort of a victim. And you've got people like Punit Shaw, who recruited 500 people into Goliath Ventures and even formed what they call the 7% Club. So when people put $100,000 in, they were getting 7% return per month. And now he's trying to claim he's a victim and didn't know it was a scam. We've got Nick Petrillo, 900 people. And Nick Petrillo tried taking Christopher to court for $40 million of unpaid rewards for recruiting 900 people into Goliath Ventures. So we've got all these individuals out there. So when it all started to collapse real badly around about December, we saw Steve Davis, Tomo, all out there doing this Goliath Strong hashtag. And they were like, so I'm actually looking for photos, and I haven't got one. But so here's Steve Davis, and here's this is another YouTuber who claims he was just an innocent victim, and he was interviewing, everybody involved. We've got Sanjay over here, he started up the Indian Chamber of Commerce. He was introducing Christopher to a lot of people. He also sells merchandise, and I've got a receipt on my desk of $400,000 worth of merch that was ordered by Alex for Goliath Ventures, which seems a bit strange. Anyway, there's lots of stories we can tell you about him, so we're going to do an in-depth thing on Sanjay. So you got Goliath, we've got Tomo, and that's just some of the photos. But some of the other photos we've got, this is the photos that we've got of Chris. They won't be very big, but you'll get the idea. That these guys are all just pissing away everyone's money. I mean, this photo here actually shocks me, but these are the Alexander brothers. These guys are now incarcerated. Now, 10 years of people coming and complaining about these guys literally drugging women and having their way with them. They're now being incarcerated and lost their battle. But the guy in the middle there, well, he's a man about town in Orlando, and we can see photos of him with Christopher here on the way to Mykonos, and you can see all these guys. So we've got, our fair share of what we'd call evidence of these guys all smoozing together. We've even got photos of the police outside. Yes, that is who you think it is, Michael Johnson. But we've got Steve Davis. I don't even know if Steve Davis is in this particular one, but got Tomo. Where have we got here? So we've just got our amazing sort of collection of their social media and all the girlfriends that Christopher's had. And it just goes on and on and on. But I just want you to know that we're not, people have sort of said that there is not much coming out about Danny at the moment. But we are, because this photo here is really the money shot. This is all the people, the co-conspirators together endorsing Christopher and everything that they're doing. You've got Vince Gratta on the end here. We've got James Del Argo. You've got Punic Shaw. We've got, Alex. I can't even remember their names, but there's Steve Davis in the middle here. So I've just got to ask you guys, how can these guys all endorse, promote, collect money, tell you what to do with your money? They're not regulated financial advisors. Everybody in this photo is a co-conspirator. And one of the photos I really wanted to find was one of them when they were doing the Goliath Strong, the Goliath Strong hashtag campaign. And it was next to one of these photos, and it was posted, but I don't actually have it. But here's Christopher, and this is what you'd see. And this photo was taken with another photo, which I can't find. I was trying to find it just before I went live. But they're all sitting around talking about, brotherhood, alpha mentality. And it was actually really sickening to watch. But I don't need to probably express that we've got a database of all these individuals that were not collected, but were all together endorsing Christopher. I mean, look at what Christopher is actually thrown away. So his wife, you might think, wow, Danny's putting up photos of his kids. I know he's adopted a child, but his wife, we've got correspondence where we know that she just went on a first-class cruise. She was getting paid $20,000 a month, not to cover the cost of the family, just a backhander from Chris. And we've got correspondence from her where she is teaching people, showing people how to invest in Goliath Ventures. So everybody's had their friggin' hand in this, helping Chris build this. And we've had enough. And if, literally we can tell you that my Avengers are actually getting contacted by agents wanting our data now, which is fantastic. So this isn't going away. And we haven't gone quiet. We're just busy providing the receipts to anybody. So my advice to anybody that is sitting on their hands thinking that they have profited from being associated with Goliath Ventures is to actually go and email those people and do something about it and fess up before you tarnish your reputation for the rest of your life. Or I do an expose about you. Now, Stephen is a disgusting individual. I've talked to him on the phone. He is a bottom feeder. He is a coward. He's got a family. And I'm really trying to figure out what drives this guy and what gets this guy out of bed in the morning. So if you've had dealings with him, we want to know about it. We want to finish this guy off. We want to see this guy behind bars. This is not a hero. This is a guy that couldn't piss on a fire to put it out. He is a fallen angel, for the use of another word. And we're not having a bar of it. So let's get into the dirty tactics that this guy has done. And let me prove to you, without a doubt in your mind, that we are not letting these guys get away with it. When the story does not match the paperwork, follow the paperwork. It's not rocket science. There's a carefully constructed narrative circulating about Stephen Davis, a former fire chief who stepped away from public service and reinvented himself as an entrepreneur, a mentor and a leader. Now, I'm trying to stay on script here, guys, but every time I hear him as a mentor, I hear this stupid thing about the Alpha Men's Club. And it just makes me want to cry that there's men out there that think that male dominance and is the way to, the brotherhood. Like these guys, most of the time I talk to them, they want to meet face to face, man to man. And I'm going, I don't really want to get into a fist fight with you guys. I'm not really that sort. And if I did, I'd fight for my life because I'd be fearful that these guys don't know when to stop. But if this is what it takes in the world, If you need to have a fist fight, a physical fight with somebody to prove who's more manly, or you have to prove how much money you have in your bank account before you have a voice and stand up to these individuals. What is the world all about? I've got no money. It's not what I do this for. But a guy that goes into a burning building to save people, potentially, if he ever has, I don't know if he has, you would think that he's got the right attitude. And to mislead people into him being a good guy, like the other firemen out there, and then abuse that because he wants to make a lot of money and smoke cigars with a bunch of criminals, is that what the world has come down to? On the surface, it's a compelling story. It speaks discipline, resilience, a legacy, the kind of story that earns trust quickly, especially from people who recognize the weight of a uniform and the responsibility that comes with it. I mean, think about this. I mean, okay, a fire uniform, maybe not. When I see a fireman turn up, my house is on fire and he's wearing a uniform and he's got all the gear on, I think this guy's a bloody hero. When I see a policeman, like when I was in America with my mate Richard, and we're in his 18-wheeler truck. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. I hadn't eaten all day. And Richard's going, let's go get you a feed. And we're off to a truck stop. And then we see a policeman wearing his big hat, pulling his gun on a guy who he's pulled up because we found out afterwards the guy in the car had pulled a gun at that policeman. And then next minute, the guy screeches off and the policeman goes after him. And then Richard and I chase after him in the truck. One hell of a video if you haven't watched it already. Anyway, why we went to the truck stop 30 miles down the road and we bumped into 2 policemen and we told them that we just saw them pulling their weapon on a guy and they said that was us. And the lady beside him, I said, you guys are hero. I said, I'm from New Zealand and I'm a scam fighter. I've been here for just over an hour. And Richard's driven 7 or 8 hours across to pick up a load from where I was getting picked up from the airport so he could meet me. We never met Richard. And here's 2 guys in uniform that had just had somebody point a gun at them. And I managed to catch it on video. They said, can we get a copy of the video? We gave them the video. The rest is history. But my point is, anybody in a uniform, we have a lot of respect for. Whether it's a fireman, policeman, a doctor, a sailor, somebody from the Navy. To abuse that is what the low-life Steve Davis has done. But over time, I've learned that credibility is often the first layer of protection in schemes like this. No proof, no transparency, just perception. And when you start pulling off the perception side by side with documented timelines, private communication, and legal correspondence, the gap between the story and the reality can become impossible to ignore. This investigation is not built on speculation. It is grounded in comprehensive records, legal documents, and detailed I can't get that quite right. I'll try that one. Chronology of events, and the first-hand statement submitted for publication. What it reveals is not just a business dispute or a personal fallout, but a pattern of behavior that sits uncomfortably close to something much bigger. The collapse of Goliath Ventures, a company now in the center of a federal fraud case. What follows is the documented story behind the connection. So we haven't done this by half. So there's a statement that you can download from my website, and this is from an individual who has had direct dealings with Steve Davis. And we will read this, but I'm not going to read it just now because I don't want to lose the flow of what is happening. But this statement is breathtaking. It is actually upsetting. It is absolutely disgusting. The threats of this guy to try to fight the fire, for the use of a better word, and the facts and the receipts. Now, all this here, I've been told, is backed up by evidence. It's backed up by recordings of customers that have, rung up for consultation. They have all those, and it's just breathtaking. So let's not get distracted by the video, but by the evidence. But what I'm saying, I've just put that in the chat room. I think truck drivers need a a uniform. What do you reckon, Rich? Bonehead firemen, truck drivers too. I think it's quite cool. Hey, thank you everyone in the chat room. Sorry, I'm pretty focused on this one because this one actually really upsets me. The business behind the image. To understand what happened here, you have to separate the public persona from the paper trail. So let's go back. Now, I think this is just too much of a coincidence. But on September the 3rd, 2024, Choice Press was formed in Wyoming. Any one of my investigators from my Avengers, would know the significance of the 3rd of September. I'm going to tell you. Goliath closed down its company. My first publication was on the 3rd of December, and then I found out that Goliath Ventures actually shut down operation in Florida and reopened it in Wyoming on the 3rd of September. This company that we're about to look at was opened in Wyoming on the 3rd of September. Now, that's opened a hornet's nest of information for Steve Davis to why would he do that? We know why you've done it, Steve, and we're going to do this on the follow-up blog, and it's going to be a goodie. Anyway, Nadia Bringus, the bookkeeper, who just managed to administrate a company that could turn over $328 million, also formed her company on the 3rd of September. Goliath Ventures reopened themselves in Wyoming on the 3rd of December. The only thing that we're surprised about was the fact that you didn't use Harry J. Samuels to set up, but instead, what it really, I don't know if I can bring this up in a hurry, but the person that actually set up this company, what's this doing? Hold it. Let's see if I've got additional details here. Original, I'm just going to see if it's, see the filing. Now, I just have to, 1 minute, please, second. I just want to this is actually quite relevant. If I can get this document downloaded, it will be quite relevant. Okay, so here we go here. So this is the actual, now this person here is just a registered agent. So this person, this registered agent does not exist. It is a fake persona that lots of people who set up fraudulent companies, in my opinion, use the same person. So why would Steve Davis set up a company in Wyoming, and why would he set it up using a fake agent when you're a legitimate company? Now, I've got nothing to prove that he's not legitimate company, but the patterns are the same, and the evidence that we're about to look at that's been documented and recorded will speak for itself. The structure was clear. Stephen Davis held 60% ownership stake, while his business partner, Joseph Lawrence, held 40%. Davis contributed $50,000. Okay, put your hand up, put a 7 in the chat room if you think the $50,000 of capital that got paid into that company came from proceeds that he got from Goliath Ventures. 7 in the chat room, everybody. Brilliant. So that's a paper trail. That's a receipt, and that will be proven that that money, did it come from Steve Davis's 401k with the fire brigade? Did it come from his real estate investments that we have unraveled lately? Let's find out. So Davis contributed $50,000 in initial capital and positioned the company as something more than just a commercial venture, describing it as a legacy project that would eventually be handed over once certain milestones were achieved. So it's called carrots, and all good Ponzi schemes have carrots, just like Goliath Ventures did. So he's telling the other business partner there that basically when milestones are reached, things would change, and this could actually help somebody who was doing 98% of the work in the company potentially build themselves a future. At face value, this looks like a standard entrepreneurial partnership, but even in the early documentations, there are subtle signals worth paying attention to. Control remained firmly with Davis, not 50-50 with your business partner. Compensation structures were defined early, then later revisited. Is that right? Compensation? I better get that word right.
Compensation.
Oh my God, I got it right. And while the business was presented outwardly as a cooperative, I can't even say that. So cooperative.
Collaborative venture.
That's why I couldn't do it. Collaborative venture. Internally, the balance of power was never in questions because you can see it. Over the following months, the company operated, grew, and took on new clients. Payments were made, agreements were formed, but beneath the surface, tensions began to build, not just about the money, but around the decision-making, transparency, and direction. What started as a partnership began to show signs of strain. And then in late 2025, the second layer of risk entered the picture. And this is really massive, guys. So imagine, so they'd already started, he's involved in Goliath Ventures, we knew that. But this company goes back to September 2025. And then all of a sudden, Goliath Ventures Connections was the Goliath Ventures Connections that changed everything. In November 2025, public reporting identified Stephen Davis as being connected to Goliath Ventures Inc. So when you click on Goliath Ventures Inc., that will take you away to the actual Wayback Machine, and it will actually show you stuff that they can never delete off the internet. And that is the team that were in Goliath Ventures. And you can come down here and you can see all these co-conspirators, and there's Steve Davis mentioned there as the Director of Administration. A company that was already drawing scrutiny for its investment model. That alone should have triggered serious questions, not just externally, but internally with any business tied to his name. So that's the question. How would you feel if you went into partnership with somebody and he controlled the majority share of the business that you thought that you were, had some sort of clout in, and all of a sudden your director, for the use of a better word, is all of a sudden been highlighted that he's involved with a company that is doing fraud? When these questions were raised directly, the response was immediate and dismissive. So people in the company going, hey, Steve Davis, what's going on here with Goliath Ventures? You're in all their photos and all their promotional, you're off doing all their promotions for Goliath Ventures, and all of a sudden, you're a good dude, it's all bullshit. So Steve's actual quote was, you're all good dude, it's all bullshit. So everything that was going down with Goliath Ventures was all bullshit. Don't worry, in other words, that's what he's telling. That message wasn't part of a public statement. It was carefully worded response vetted by legal counsel. It was a private reassurance given in direct response to legitimate concerns. At the same time, there were discussions about getting ahead of it by contacting media outlets, including Business Insider. And we'll have a look at that in a minute. And that comment, I'm getting a bit there.
That combination matters.
Because when you see it, here we go. I'm just going to read a couple of paragraphs to get my mojo back.
Private dismissal of serious allegations, simultaneous efforts to shape a public narrative. You're no longer looking at transparency, you're looking at control of perception.
Right. And that pattern, and that's, I can't even read that. Oh, that does not make quite sense to Danny. 1 minute, please call it. I'm just going to read this and then I'll show the article.
And that pattern, managing the story instead of addressing the substance, is something I've seen repeatedly in high-risk investment schemes.
I have. Now, the Business Insider magazine is absolutely world-class because when the shit hit the fan with Goliath, Steve Davis's first reaction is to get ahead of the media. So he contacted Insider magazine, and we actually got this article removed off the internet. So if you go to, there's no point me saying that without proving it. So let's just go to the Business Insider today. And now we've got error because it doesn't exist anymore. But this, we wrote to Business Insider. We've done the hard work here, guys. We wrote to Business Insider magazine and we said, what the hell are you doing letting somebody place this advert in your paper? They removed it. Steve Davis fought back. He was really angry, so we got told, good on the Avengers. And then he said, my article's coming back and it's no big deal. Well, your article hasn't come back, Steve. It's been removed. But this is what he got published. And this is what I'm trying to get at here. This is his doubling down, trying to make out he's a credible person by doing a sponsored article with the Business Insider magazine, rather than saying, "Oh my God, guys, I was involved in one of the largest Ponzi schemes and scams in America." He has showed no remorse for his activities. I'm actually going to read this article, because I think this is Steve's words, obviously, and Steve's proud of what he put on paper to lift his profile.
From firefighter chief to entrepreneur, Stephen Davis announces growth of Raising Alphas and new publishing house Choice Press release Plantis of November 14, 2025, 2:10 a.m. Orlando, Florida, United States, November 14, 2025. Stephen Davis spent more than 2 decades in fire and emergency services, rising through the ranks to become division chief. His career ended abruptly when he declined an order to issue citations to firefighters under his command, who refused vaccination during the height of pandemic protocols. "I couldn't, in good conscience, discipline people for making a personal medical decision," Davis said. That decision cost him his post, but opened an unexpected path toward new ventures that merge his sense of duty with a broader conversation about family and leadership.
So he's actually in here called himself division chief, which means he's not the chief. He was just division chief. And also you can see here that he obviously was standing up for people that didn't want to be vaccinated. So this is his, and here he is. I've done this photo before, which is quite a hard case. But if you look at my blog, you'll see I replaced him to me sitting in front of his cruddy Porsche. But that's a good. So here we've got fire chief. Now, I don't think there's going to be many firemen that have got photos of them sitting in front of a Porsche or a sports car. It's not a very good sports car, Steve. Not that I'm into my cars where I'm going to judge people what they drive, but obviously a lot of the stuff that you see here, these guys are using. And look, the photo courtesy of Steve Davis. So let's read this article and let's lap up what Steve wants you to think he is. And then we're going to tell you the real picture.
Before his exit from the firehouse, Davis had also served in the U.S. Army as a mechanized infantry medic and flight medic. Those years, stationed in Germany and at the National Training Center in Fort Irwin, reinforced habits of preparation and the ability to make quick, consequential decisions. His subsequent firefighting career brought similar demands, managing teams in crisis and navigating the politics of public service. The vaccine mandate dispute brought those experiences into sharp focus, prompting him to rethink how he could influence public life outside government employment.
Yeah, and I'm just going to read this paragraph. While I'm reading this paragraph, we're just going to go through to the Raising Alphas project. And the funny thing about this, if you're a website developer, you'll probably get, but where you link through, they have missed the T, which probably would insinuate to me that there must be a place where you can create your own content and publish it, and it gets approved once you've made payment for your sponsored adverts. But he's obviously stuffed up not a very good website developing technique there. But let's listen to this next paragraph, and I'll show you the Raising Alphas project website while we're listening to this.
Building the Raising Alphas project. Soon after leaving the fire service, Davis co-founded the Raising Alphas project, a parenting and leadership initiative that began as a podcast and grew into a digital platform. The project encourages parents to cultivate independence and critical thinking in their children. Trace Davis believes will help the next generation meet complex social challenges. "We can't delegate character building to schools or peer groups," he said. "Parents have to be the primary teachers of integrity."
Right, so we've just gone past the website, gone straight into here. Now you can see here that you've got Steve Davis and you've got Jonathan Mason. Now, Jonathan Mason claims there's $1 billion worth of crypto locked up. And Jonathan Mason's currently probably been talking to investigators or receivers of Goliath Ventures. But you can see this whole project here and all these, if you go through here, we've contacted a lot of these individuals that are in these thumbnails. And we've asked them these questions, why they were associated themselves with Goliath Ventures. But what we've found is Tomo has his own YouTube, Instagram, TikToks, and these guys have basically got a brotherhood together, and they're all self-promoting each other within their own environment. But there's a lot of people, like this guy here is Gary Rice. I think I've got that right. Gary Rice is the videographer. who's in these videos and been interviewed. So it's all the Goliath boys. If you went through these videos and listened to these videos, it's all self-promotions. And if you don't ask questions or do due diligence about the people behind these, you would think this was actually a network of businessmen helping the community. But what they're actually doing here, which if you're not familiar with, is all self-promotion, endorsing bad behavior to each other. This goes back 2 years, and if you're just even looking at the thumbnails like I am, I'm recognizing people in these photos. These are all people. So look at this. We've got Christopher in here, being interviewed. We've watched this video, and they've actually, it's disgusting what they've done. So what I'm getting at here is that if you want the evidence to prove co-conspirators were working together, and you've got Tomo over here being interviewed. The evidence is right here. These guys were endorsing Goliath Ventures. They were using, raising alpha projects as a veneer to, promote to investors. They were repackaging, if not white labeling, what Goliath Ventures was offering, all to profit from it. Now, if these guys want to sit here and say we knew nothing about what was happening with Goliath Ventures, that's a lie. If we go back to raising alphas, you can actually see some of these guys. So you've got Steve Davis sitting here. Meet the founder, Steve Davis, BS, definitely BS, MS, whatever that means. A founder raising alphas project, co-founder of Choice Press, US Army veteran, former Orange County and Lakes Country Fire chief officer, author, speaker, leadership. This is what they want you to think that Steve Davis is.
Stephen Davis is a decorated US Army veteran and former chief officer in the fire service, with more than 22 years of leadership in fire and EMS. A lifelong public servant and disciplined entrepreneur, Stephen has built his life and career around service, integrity, and leadership. Through thousands of emergency responses, years spent leading high-performance teams, and his transition into entrepreneurship, he has developed a signature leadership philosophy grounded in accountability, courage, and clarity. Today, Stephen serves as the co-founder of both Choice Press and the Raising Alphas project. His work centers on helping families, authors, and business leaders grow through coaching, publishing, and leadership development. Stephen is the creator of the 5-rung ladder of leadership, a practical and transformative framework for building high-performing teams and raising future leaders at home and in the workplace. A published author and engaging speaker, Stephen shares hard-earned insights on leadership, legacy, and personal discipline. He lives in Central Florida with his wife, Veronica, and their 2 sons, Caden and Kai, the inspiration behind the Raising Alphas mission.
So you actually live on Orange Street, don't you, Steve? Orange Avenue? I forget. Same building. I think 189 Orange Street was Christopher's new offices that never got published. So this is today, and this is live. This is not in the Wayback Machine, but here he is on the website of his project promoting Christopher as a co-founder of Raising Alphas. Now, this is major because this guy has been charged for his connection to a $128 million Ponzi scheme. And now we've seen it right in front of us that he is a co-founder of Raising Alphas. These co-conspirators are not innocent victims. They have set up companies, brands, endorsed each other. And here's the evidence. Their own website states that Christopher is a co-founder of Raising Alphas, the male-dominated, I hate it.
Chris Delgado, co-founder. Chris Delgado is a father, coach, and community builder whose passion for leadership shaped the early mission of the Raising Alphas project. With a strong background in coaching youth sports and developing young men through discipline, teamwork, and mentorship, Chris helped establish the foundational principles of the project: accountability, integrity, and the daily pursuit of excellence. His dedication to fatherhood and his commitment to raising strong sons continue to influence the spirit of the Raising Alphas community.
Now, if you didn't know that Christopher has been charged for running one of the biggest Ponzi schemes and scams in America, and you were looking at this today, What would you think? And another one that I'm really glad is David Panzik. We don't see much of him, but I don't know if these guys are batshit crazy or not. But can you not see that this raising alphas thing was all set up to get the brother? It's all about building communities. And this whole project has nothing to do with providing advice to youth or inspiring young people to be strong. This is all set up to attract people to ask those questions. And then they would pitch Goliath Ventures to them. And we can see from the receipts that the people that are coming forward to us now that have invested in Goliath Ventures, the firemen that have come to us saying we were victims, have all come from the credibility that they self-promoted themselves with. Even I want to read this for the record so we've got it on file.
David Panzik, co-founder. David Panzik is a husband, father, and lifelong athlete with a deep commitment to physical discipline, moral character, and family leadership. His belief that strength begins at home guided the early development of the Raising Alphas identity, a mindset that challenges families to build leaders through consistent action, high standards, and unwavering values. David's influence helped set the tone for Raising Alphas, disciplined living, strong families, and the courage to stand apart in a follower-driven world.
Right, so look at this, guys. Beautiful wife. This guy's jeopardized everything he's probably built to get involved in promoting a scam. He's wearing if you look here, you'll see he's actually wearing the Goliath badge. He's wearing a snake on his one, and he's using who would wear a 5-button shirt like this with a gold bracelet? All this is stolen everything. Dyeing his hair when it's that short would cost a bundle. Just saying. So, beautiful wife, these guys are jeopardizing everything, all because they want to be, and this whole thing here, these photos, I'm a hero. Doesn't it make you question anybody who says they're a hero now? Those exalting themselves will be humbled, and those humbling will be exalted. Never a truer word spoken, I believe. Absolutely disgusting. So that's the Raising Alphas project, which I believe the co-founder, Christopher Delgado, the financials behind this company, if there is any financials, should be brought into the receiver's attention. If we go through here, we can actually see. Now, these firing, do you know, I know where these photos were taken. So, you've got, this is evidence right here. I'm actually surprised that they haven't used their brain and deleted these photos. This was actually on the golf course, which he's now banned. Even if he was allowed to get out and play golf, he's got golf right out his back door gate. We've got a photo of Christopher laying on the sun deck with his ankle bracelet on the golf course that he's not allowed to join. These photos here, here's Steve Davis lighting a cigar for Christopher on the golf course. I didn't know he was running a scam. Look at this, Raising Alpha Cigars, Lord Delgado on the cigars. The money that these guys have blown on people, there's still opportunities that you can get your name in. This is where these guys have been hiding. This is where they've been doing all their promotions, their Instagram accounts. Look, here's friggin' Jonathan. We're going to break down every one of these individuals and show that these guys, Tomos, are co-conspirators. These guys, if they have signed you up, you need to go and file lawsuits against these individuals. There's Mike sitting there on mic, basically telling everyone that these are heroes. They've been going to these events, all paid for by Christopher, I'm sure, getting on Lear jets. I mean, look at this sort of stuff. Where did the money come from? Where did a fireman wearing a Goliath Ventures t-shirt all of a sudden get enough money to get on a Lear jet and go off for a holiday to somewhere? Where do these interviews come from? Look at this.
Those is building
a winning team.
Building a winning team. I don't know everything, and it's not, and another part of it too is I can't do everything.
Sure.
My time is very limited during the day. So you need to build the winning team. You need people that, have been in business and may have succeeded or may have failed, but they have insight and they can come into your business and say, wait, I did that and it didn't work out. I had corporate experience and I was going into.
He used to work at In-N-Out Burger, flipping burgers, and got fired for stealing. And now he's been charged for one of the biggest Ponzi schemes and scams. And these idiots listened to him and acted on him and followed him around like little scavengers, waiting for him to pay for their next bar tab. That's just disgusting behavior. So, Raising Alpha Project, used to endorse Goliath Ventures. Co-founder, Christopher Delgado. The man behind it all, Steve Davis. The man that rubbished me for speaking the truth. The man that knew that they were doing a lawsuit against me, or tried to. Also knew that they offered me $150,000 to delete all my videos. Staked out my neighborhood where I live to find out where I lived, and then knock on my door and try to bribe me with an offer that I wouldn't let them tell me unless they had it on video. We found the private investigator company that they hired. We found the lawyers that they used in New Zealand. And we're also going after the lawyers that instigated all the lawsuit in America. And we're coming after you. And it's going to be good for me. Just saying. All right. So if you want to get into a rabbit hole like we often do, you can see the hours and hours of work that we do. We can prove things. We can, I want to read the last paragraphs of Steve Davis so we can get back onto the Steve Davis topic. But let's have a listen.
The website hosts podcast episodes, features written content, and sells merchandise ranging from apparel to accessories. It attracts a national audience that engages with the content across major streaming services and social media platforms. While its social following remains modest, around a few thousand on Instagram, the project reflects a larger trend in U.S. entrepreneurship, values-driven businesses that blend media and community building. According to U.S. Census Bureau data, new business applications have averaged roughly 430,000 per month in 2024, a level about 50% higher than in 2019. Many of these enterprises, like Raising Alphas, use digital channels to serve niche audiences rather than chasing mass markets.
So it is important to read this because this is self-promotion. And also, as I said, those, Raising Alpha website, the YouTube channel, I've literally seen where they've got 2,000 or 3,000 views on a video and the comments don't add up to the amount of views. You can go through my YouTube channel and you can see how many comments I get on the videos. So what I'm alleging is I believe they pay to get the views, but they don't get the comments. And if they do get comments, they're never really any meaning comments. And this is a telltale sign. So they're putting out this veneer of success to the uneducated eye that would look at it and go, wow, look at all the things that these guys are doing.
Launching Choice Press. This year, Davis expanded his entrepreneurial footprint with the launch of Choice Press, a publishing house designed to give authors an outlet for works on parenting, leadership and civic responsibility. His own memoir, Alone in the Fire, The First Alarm, is the company's inaugural title. The book recounts the decision that ended his firefighting career and how it spurred his commitment to encouraging families to raise confident, principled children.
Just looking at the book, we'll go back and read that paragraph while we're reading those. So you can double read, you can listen and read. We'll read the reviews. He's now got 8 reviews out of 7. Last time I looked, he had 7, so I'm dying to see the new review.
Choice Press enters a competitive publishing environment that continues to evolve. Industry analysts at the Association of American Publishers report that U.S. trade book sales totaled roughly $9.6 billion in 2024. With non-fiction titles accounting for a significant share of growth. Independent publishers have gained ground in recent years by focusing on targeted readerships and direct-to-consumer distribution, a model Davis hopes to replicate. We want to give writers a platform to speak to families about leadership and responsibility, without being filtered by large corporate interests, he said. By pairing his own book with a publishing platform, Davis seeks to extend the conversation sparked by Raising Alphas while supporting authors who share similar themes. The The move reflects an ongoing shift in publishing toward niche markets and direct audience engagement.
Yeah. So interesting. We've only got 2 bad reviews. So anyway, he's had 8 reviews now, and but going by patterns of seeing these guys publish, it's just a hard case. So it's just not real. That's what I'm getting at. Entrepreneurial. So this goal has remained. I'll just get rid of this last paragraph so we get it all on record before they.
His goals remain ambitious but grounded. I'm focused on helping families instill courage and moral clarity in their children, Davis said. That starts with parents setting the example every day by turning a moment of professional conflict into an opportunity to influence families nationwide. Stephen Davis has shifted from a career defined by emergency response to one centered on long-term civic engagement and family leadership.
Now, I did notice here it's got Joseph Lawrence's name at the bottom of that, so I'm only assuming that he got Joseph to publish that for him on behalf. And as I know from my experience, Joseph is also a ghostwriter, so he may have actually even written that for Steve, but I'm pretty sure Steve wouldn't have had that published unless he approved it. So I'm just being transparent on that. So let's see. So listen to this part.
Should you come across any errors, concerns, or inconsistencies within this press release's content, we urge you to reach out without delay by contacting Error.
So we did reach out to them and they removed the article. Also, it says Markets Insiders and Business Insider Journal's team are not involved in the creation of this post. So it wasn't like I got interviewed by the New York Times and the author actually had, the journalist actually interviewed me 4 times over Zoom. It took 13 weeks before the article got published. And then when it did get published, I weren't in control of what it said. The journalist actually told me what happened with the questions he asked and the answers I gave. It was really, really cool. But I actually managed to be in a 2-page spread in the printed edition of the New York Times. Unfortunately, I never got, I ordered a copy and I ordered the wrong date and it got lost in the mail. So I haven't actually got that. But you can go and search for the Crypto Ponzi Scheme Avenger, which is what they nicknamed me. And you can find that article. But obviously, that was a real big thing. So there's a pattern here. So now we're going to go back to the blog. I've got distracted. We've had a look at the book that he's published. It's not a raving success. Now, just to go down the rabbit hole of not being a raving success again, what I actually want to do is reiterate that a lot of these people that claim they can get your book as a #1 seller or can publish you a book that's going to make you pay off your mortgage after you mortgage your house for it is a load of rubbish. Because I always say to people, practice what you preach. So you can see that Steve Davis's book has only had 8 reviews. I'm assuming he hasn't been made a fortune by publishing the book, but he was encouraged somebody to mortgage their house to get him to ghostwrite them a book. It's quite a sad story when he hasn't even been successful with his own book. And apparently, going by his own information, he's a raving success on the internet. So let's get into this paragraph. I'm going to have this one read for me.
When the private story starts to break by December 2025, the tone behind the scenes had shifted. In a documented discussion, Stephen Davis acknowledged significant personal financial exposure tied to Goliath Ventures. This wasn't vague concern, it was specific. He described potential losses including a property in Germany valued at approximately $500,000 and another in Dubai with around $150,000. More importantly, he characterized Goliath as a company that had scaled rapidly into a billion-dollar operation without the infrastructure required to support investor withdrawals.
Oh my God. So this is amazing, really. So where did the $500,000 initially come from? And where did the $150,000 initially come from? Well, we know, and we've given it to the receivers. We're also looking at the deeds on the property. Now, when when Christopher got charged, it actually mentioned that Steve Davis would have to move out of where he was living on the 26th of March, I believe. Could have the dates wrong, but the fact is he had to move out of where he was living. And that was because he had mortgages, we believe, over the house that he was living in, which were meaning that it was all tied up with Goliath Ventures. So he'd mortgaged the properties, we believe, and invested in Goliath Ventures. And now those houses were, I don't know, well, no more. I don't know how to explain that, but I think you can probably hopefully understand what I'm trying to say here. But anyway, at the end of the day, he's lost a whole lot of money to Goliath Ventures. So he would probably put his hand up and say that I lost money too. Just like Nick Petrillo said that he lost a lot of money and he was asking for $40 million of Christopher because that was of unpaid rewards. In the meantime, Steve Petrillo is driving around in a Rolls Royce, buying an $8.5 million mansion, which we do believe he's got a $5 million mortgage, which I would love to know how you're managing to pay that now, Nick. And a lot of these other people have also bought themselves flash cars, like Tomo, for example, has got some sort of collectible car worth hundreds of thousands of dollars that he puts out and displays for special events. If you scrutinize those companies and find out how they actually managed to get the cash flow that they've been investing in these companies, I'm sure there'll be a lot of red flags there for investigators to see. And now we know that these investigators have powers to go after any smoking guns where they see money has been moving, because these investigators will actually follow the money. If the good investigators that they have got, we know, they will follow the money. And we're giving them the smoking guns, and they're doing the investigations, and they're contacting my team of Avengers. So we need you people to come out. If you've got any receipt of any movements of money from Goliath Ventures, Steve Davis, Tomo, Mike Kradinsky, I never get his name right, let us know, because we will go back for you and give those to the receivers and the investigators and the judges and ask them to investigate. And they're doing it, which is really exciting. This is that contact is critical, because at the exact time these admissions were being made privately, the public-facing narrative remained polished and intact. The image of stability, leadership, and success continued to be promoted, even as the underlying structure was being described internally. It was being described, am I got that word right?
Internally.
As unstable to function properly. So here he is making admissions that Goliath Ventures has grown into a $1 billion company, but didn't have the infrastructure to pay out the reward money that people, or the hyper compounding money. I mean, how ridiculous. Maybe you shouldn't have used Nadia Bringas as a bookkeeper to run a multi-billion dollar company. Just saying. This disconnect is not accidental, it's structural. In schemes like this, the external narrative must remain strong for as long as possible, because confidence is what keeps the system alive. Once confidence breaks, everything else follows. Now, remember, they're all sitting around smoking cigars, doing Instagram posts, hashtag Goliath Strong, because Vince Guerretta had created doubt, lost his nerve, backed out of it, and they were criticizing him publicly. But in the meantime, just before they blew $5 million on a Christmas event on the 12th, I think, I forget now, either the 10th or the 12th of December, they blew $5 million of investors' money on a party for Christmas to show their success. And all these guys, the Raising Alpha guys, the co-sponsored, co-founder, Chris Diego set it up. They were sitting around smoking cigars at cafes, skiting about how successful Goliath was, trying to give the persona out there that the company was still strong. And did these guys back down, or did they have too much pride? They just carried on painting this picture out to everybody, got dressed up in monkey suits, and went along and celebrated with Jason Girillo how wonderful Goliath Ventures were, where underneath they already knew the system was collapsing. And they were trying to pilfer the last money out of Goliath Ventures to set up their own companies like Choice Press. And we've got the receipts. The moment that raises ethical red flags. One of the most concerning moments is the entire timeline does not come from legal documents or financial disclosure. It comes from a recorded sales call. Now, this is where I'm getting where ethics go out the window. During that call, a prospective client described as financially vulnerable, supporting a family on a modest income, was asked about his financial position. The conversation pivoted by Davis to a suggestion. This is what he said. Now imagine somebody coming in to buy a sports car and you knew they couldn't afford it, And then the salesman says, well, I'm involved with Goliath Ventures, and this is what we're telling people to do. And then what does he say? He said, suggested levering home equity to fund publishing services. I don't even know what to say. I better keep reading. This wasn't a hypothetical discussion about financial legitimacy. It was a real-time interaction with a real person in a vulnerable position. This is what I'm saying. They've gone after people's 401ks. You know, there was Wealth MD. There was Black Block, not to be mistaken as Black Rock. And they were all different entities like Raising Alphas, all set up to go after a different type of clientele. And here's these guys setting up their own companies and using the same dirty, disgusting techniques to market and line their own pockets. That moment matters because it speaks directly to judgment and boundaries. It also wasn't ignored internally. So unfortunately, the business partner that was there at the time couldn't believe what they were hearing. It was raised as a formal moral concern shortly after the call. What the hell were you thinking by saying that to that person? Oh, what do you mean? And when you place that incident alongside involving a high-risk investment operation, Goliath Ventures, it begins to form a broader picture, not of a single poor decision, but a pattern where risk is shifted onto others while control remains centralized. Yeah, so I just can't get over that. That I don't like doing sales myself. It's probably why I struggle financially. I can't sell anything unless I actually, like I sell drop shipping websites and I sell them as side hustles for people who want to have a little dabble on the side. And it does cost a reasonable amount of money, but not ridiculous amount of money to buy a ready-to-go drop shipping website. But I never sell them with hype or overinflate, outcomes. And I think that's why I don't sell them. And a good salesman basically paints something in the best light possible and doesn't talk about the negative sides where it might not work the way they're hoping. So I find it quite hard to sell them, but I don't want anybody's expectations not to be met. But these guys might think that's a good salesman. And this is not how you go about getting sales, guys, because you've got to live with yourself. The collapse becomes public. So on February 24th, 2026, the situation moved from concern to confirmation. The US Department of Justice arrested Goliath Ventures CEO, Christopher Delgado, as you can see here. There's the paperwork, on charges of wire fraud, money laundering, alleged a $328 million Ponzi scheme. This was not speculation. It was federal action backed by former charges. Now, this was absolutely amazing at the time because I initiated the investigation on September the 1st, and I started publishing content on the 3rd of September. And it was pretty ballsy at the time to take on potentially a company, but it had the same patterns, the same everything. It wasn't a no-brainer for me. And when I talked to the head investigation, John from Homeland Security, I'll say, he said this is the fastest he's ever seen anyone being charged for criminal or fraud things in his 20-year career. So there's lots of change of events that made that happen. So at the point, the implications? Implications of any connection to Goliath become unavoidable. So here he is on the homepage of Goliath Ventures website, claiming that he was chief of administrations. Now that's pretty amazing. And then all of a sudden, here's a charge. So clients began distancing themselves. Contracts were terminated. Even Tomo has now moved on. Concerns that had previously been internal now were being acted on externally. Some individuals explicitly cited the Goliath exposure to the reason. So the fact that Jonathan, they're all the same to me now. What's his name? Steve Davis was connected to Goliath's exposure as the reason they're stepping away from the business relationship they had connected with David. So people were leaving Choice Press as customers, because that's what this whole blog is about. It's Choice Press, Choice Press, and the connections that he had with Goliath obviously overlapping into this new company he tried to set up using, I'm going to say, Goliath's money to set it up. At the same time, the internal business dispute with Choice Press escalated to formal legal conflict. Now, this is where it gets really amazing. Demand letters were issued. Allegations were made. Access to records, control of accounts, and ownership rights became a point of contention. And when you read those legal demands alongside the broader timeline, a more complex question begins to emerge. Was this about protecting a business or protecting a position within it? Right, I'm going to have a break from reading here. I'm going to read this paragraph with digital. Let's go.
The legal posture versus the documented timeline. The formal demand letter issued on behalf of Stephen Davis presents a clear legal argument that his business partner breached fiduciary duties, interfered with company relationships, and misused company assets. It demands full access to records, disclosure of competing activity, and cooperation under threat of further legal action.
So we just got a message in the chat room. It said there's always two sides of the story, and it's hard to judge when you only hear one side of the story. Well, we have actually given right of reply to Steve Davis, and we haven't had any response. We gave that to him over 48 hours ago. We've also rung up Steve Davis in the past, and he's just made fun of us and yelled at me down the phone, and I yelled back, and we couldn't get anything. So if there is two sides of the story, then Steve Davis has ignored our right of reply, just for the record. And there is always two sides of the story. But when you've got receipts and you've got court filings, lawyers' letters from Steve Davis to the people that have basically put out the statement, then the receipts actually start to speak for themselves. But can we deny some really important facts? Has Goliath Ventures been charged in connection to a $328 million Ponzi scheme? Yes. They had a hearing with, I think, 341 people have now put their hand up and said they've been scammed. And they had 100 people in this hearing date. And the judge said, even though we haven't indicted Christopher, we're still going with the trail that this is a large-scale Ponzi scheme. Now, we can't deny that. Now, if I was in a company and I was innocent, and a reporter, whether you liked him or not, asked you to answer the right reply questions that I gave him, and you choose to remain silent, then I don't think it's actually fair to say there's two sides of the story when the other side of the story isn't vocal or trying to claim their innocence or even have any remorse about the involvement that they've had with Goliath Ventures. On its own, that's not unusual. Business disputes often escalate into legal positioning. But when you place the letter alongside the documented chronological, is it right? Chronology, thank you. The private admissions, the Goliath connection, the client departures, and the recorded interactions, it becomes harder to view the situation in isolation because the timeline shows a business already under pressure, a partner raising ethical concerns, external exposure tied to federal investigations, and a rampant shift towards legal control and narrative framing. That doesn't prove intent, but it does highlight a pattern of escalation that highlights with pressure, not stability. Now, to remember, when the red flag started flapping in the breeze about Goliath Ventures, Steve Davis' first thing is to get, let's publish something on Business Insider and make people not believe it. I would be coming clean. Why people believe in this? One of the most important questions in any investigation like this is simple. Why do people trust it? The answer isn't complicated, it's human. Steve Davis wasn't an anonymous promoter. He wasn't a faceless online figure. He was, in his words, a fire chief, a leader, someone who had spent years in a role, built trust on it, responsibility, and service. That kind of background carries weight. especially within close-knit communities like the firefighting networks. Now, I bet you if I had all the firemen that have invested in Goliath Ventures sitting here in my chat room, and I said, put a 7 in the chat room. There's a reason why we always say 7. We follow a lady called Megan Lynch, and every time she says something positive, she says, put a 7 in the chat room to agree with me. So we just sort of use that in case you're wondering why I'm doing that. My point was, if we had all the firemen that had invested from Goliath Ventures in the chat room right now, would you put a 7 in the chat room if I said, because the way he escalated himself or presented himself or his accolades that he gave, is that why you trusted that what he was giving you was true and genuine? When someone like that presents an opportunity, people don't approach it with the same skepticism. Wouldn't that they would apply to a stranger. So if somebody comes to you and say, look, this is the best thing since sliced bread, and you knew them and it was a friend, a relative, or a colleague versus a stranger, you wouldn't probably be so defensive, or you may not do as much due diligence. They assume due diligence has already been done. And that's how Chinese whispers sort of work. And in the fire brigade, I actually trained, I tried to join our local fire brigade when I lived in the country, and it was all about the brotherhood. And the reason why they didn't take me on, there was a couple of reasons, but one of the main reasons was 9 o'clock on Monday, they used to have a few beers together. And I was a target shooter, and I used to go to fire training at 7 o'clock, and then at 8:30 I'd leave the fire brigade and go off to do my target shooting. And I used to be in 2 clubs on the same night. They didn't like the fact that I wasn't part of the brotherhood and have a few beers after training. So, the brotherhood is everything in the fire brigade. And, it's not rocket science here, ladies and gentlemen. Steve Davis abused the brotherhood that he'd built up over years and went for the money instead, the money or the bag. They assumed due diligence had already been done. They assume integrity. And that's exactly what makes situations like this so dangerous, because when trust is borrowed from past identities and applied to a completely different context, it lowers the guard for everyone involved. So the human cost behind the documents, behind every timeline, every document, every legal exchange, there were real people dealing with the consequences, families who invested based on trust, individuals who committed savings, equity, or retirement funds, which we have got evidence of that, people who believed they were being guided by someone they respected. The statement submitted for publication makes the impact clear. It describes not just financial loss, but the emotional weight of watching someone you trusted become unrecognizable in their action. Just make sure I've got that word right. I think it is.
Unrecognizable.
It documents the moment where personal loyalty, well, goodness me,
Collided.
with professional reality, and the cost of that collision. I think that's collision. Sorry.
Collision.
That's the part that doesn't appear in the sponsored articles or the polished profiles, but it's the part that matters the most. Direct messaging from Stephen. So this is where we get into the nitty gritty. Stephen, this was where the story doesn't have to end the way the stories usually do. You're not an anonymous name buried in a blockchain wallet. You're not a distant promoter operating behind layers of distance. You were inside this. You were part of the structure, the communication, the decisions, the relationship, the trust, the relationship that built trust around it. This is what all this Ponzi schemes and scams that we've been investigating, myself and the Avengers, for the last 5 years, plus 5 years, probably more like 6 years these days. It's all about building trust and having credibility, a profile, stature is all what builds trust with people. And they abuse trust because it means you have something that most people don't, first-hand knowledge of how this actually worked. Right now, you have a choice. You can continue down the same path, managing the perception, just putting narratives, and relying on legal positioning to attain to contain the situation. So like a firefighter, have you ever seen a firefighter light a fire to contain a fire? It's amazing when they do it. Now, it's really cool. So I was once, we were raking the paddock for hay, and my mate's tractor, who was a fireman driving it, he decided the tractor had a spark that came out the chimney and it lit a fire. He was busy on his tractor. I was sitting there trying to fight the fire, and I wasn't a fireman at the time. And I'm not now, I never have been, but I was training to be a fireman at one stage for a wee while. Different story, different day. Anyway, I saw a big fire. My mate's driving his tractor, who's a fireman, and I can't even get his attention because I'm trying to contain the fire. So I'd push back all the leaves as much as I could, and then a spark would pop over from one to the next, and I'd have a bigger fire. And then eventually he had to call the fire brigade, and it was the first fire that he had turned up to on time because it was on his own property. But long story, different story. Don't know why I had to tell you that story. But what I'm trying to do, containing a fire, sometimes you can light other fires and have a burn line around it so the fire doesn't jump over to another paddock. And it's quite a clever thing to do. Now, I believe that he was trying to contain the fire of Goliath that was burning through his own reputation and everything, but never admitted he was part of the arsonist team that started the fire. Hope I explained that right. Or you can step forward and do something that actually aligns with the role you built your reputation on. I mean, this is, to me, and I'll be out there and say it to your face, Stephen, is you are a coward. And you've done everything to firefight this, but you've never showed any accountability for your actions. Now, anyone in their right mind could actually say to you, Steve, why don't you put your hand up and actually admit wrongdoing? Tell the truth. Become a whistleblower. Because if there's one consistent pattern in every case of investigators, it is this. People who come forward early don't just protect themselves, they help stop damage before it spreads further. The fire is already burning. The only question is whether you're going to run towards it or stand back and watch it consume everyone around you. Now, if you are an effing hero, Steve Davis, and we have just painted a picture and written a blog about you and your everything and who you are, then be a hero like you've painted that picture. Do the right thing. Are you telling me that you haven't got any intel that would help fight the fire of Goliath? Are you a co-conspirator? Did you start up Alpha, what do you call it? Alpha, whatever the Alpha business up. Your co-founder of Finding Alphas was Christopher Delgado. You've done hours of podcasts. You've done hours of YouTube videos. You've started up a company. You've produced a book that you might as well chuck in the fireplace, because your whole life of building up a persona of being a hero fireman, somebody who cares about communities, is just gone up in smoke. You truly are a bottom feeder. You are on my radar. And the second follow-up blog that we're going to do on this is going to push it over the edge. It's going to fully expose you and the companies that you set up, the properties that you purchased, the ways that you've tried to hide the money, even though it's failed, are all going to be brought. And every person that you have fought a fire with who thought you were someone respectable is going to realize the type of person you truly are. Now, you've got 2 children and a beautiful wife, no doubt. They're going to grow up knowing their daddy wasn't a hero fireman. They're going to know that he was associated with a scammer called Christopher Delgado. They're going to see photos of you partying up with them, going to Christmas parties where they blew $5 million worth of investors' money. You disgust me. And you're a coward because you don't even want to answer the questions I asked you. Why are you letting this fire spread? Why don't you help fight the fire that you started? Are you an narcissist? Are you just worried about your own self? Have you got a cigar lit there, mate? You're lighting another cigar? Trying to keep face? Are you going to publish another Business Insider article? Are you? Are you too proud to admit wrongdoing? My challenge to you, Stephen, is to actually reach out to me. Let's do a live together. And I'll have a wee clock where I ask you a question and you can answer it any way you like. Other than that, you're a coward. And this fire can be contained. And with your 20 years knowledge as a fireman, you could do something about it, but you choose not to. Now, I haven't finished yet. I think it's important to listen to this victim statement. And the reason why is we're going to finish on this, and I'm not going to read it because I don't want my voice to influence the truth. The reason this victim statement is really important is because I want to encourage other people that have been associated with co-conspirators of what's happened with Goliath. I want you to really think, can you put a victim statement together like this and give it to us? Because when the courtroom hammer goes down, victims will be asked to read victim statements. And this one, it's actually heartbreaking to read it. And I can't read it because I probably won't get through it. But I'm going to use technology and we're going to read it. And you're going to hear about somebody's personal experience of being associated with Steve Davis.
Stephen Davis was there for my family when we needed him most. Years later, he became our biggest threat. The story of how I built a publishing company, watched a man I trusted become someone unrecognizable, and what my family has paid for that trust. Colorado Springs, Colo. My grandfather, Robert Eldridge Sr., was an ethical businessman. He built many great companies that changed lives for the better. One of those companies was Choice Publications, a Florida LLC. When he passed away, the company passed down to my mother. It was an inheritance, one which we as his family were called to honor.
Wow. So the name of the company goes back not to Steve Davis, but to another individual that trusted Steve Davis.
In November of 2020, that family, my own, was called to its most terrible trial, a car accident, in which both my brothers were struck with terrible head injuries. One of these brothers suffered a severe traumatic brain injury, TBI, and spent years in agonizing recovery. He came into my room one day and told me he wanted to write a book about his experience, that if just one person was changed for the better by what he went through, it would all be worth it. He asked if I would help him publish it.
I see.
This brought me to Choice. This was the kind of book my grandfather's company was born to publish. I said yes. I was given the company's name and its legacy to publish this title. I understood the responsibility of what I was holding. The account of an intimate and vulnerable recovery, a journey through pain and sorrow to restoration and fulfillment. Stephen Davis was there to witness all of it.
Cool. I'm quite enjoying this, actually. I'm enjoying not having to read it and not get it wrong.
The man he was. The November 2020 car accident was the asteroid strike of our lives. But Stephen Davis, a firefighter comrade of my father's, stepped in to help us without being asked. Before my brothers came home from the hospital, he rallied our neighborhood around us, getting people to bring in food, supplies, and all the support we needed. He showed up when it mattered. He put others before himself. That is the man I knew and trusted. I want to say that clearly, because what I have to say next is all the more painful, and so that this piece of writing will not be mistaken for a simple protest of petty grievances.
All right, getting into it.
Stephen Davis was my mentor. The next books I published through Choice Publications were his, Alone in the Fire and Passing Down the Legacy Journal. The former book I thought was my chance to rally around him in his own time of need. Stephen was generous, bold, and encouraging. It was a pleasure to work with him, and when he came to me with the idea of starting a new, separate company together, I was beyond excited. What we formed together, and who built it, a brand new publishing company, with $50,000 behind it, With access to a network of high-profile people and under the protection of someone I trusted, how could I say no?
Ah, so that would be cool. So that obviously I didn't. I'll be honest, I haven't actually read this word for word. I kind of have, but not the way that you. It's really good because this is a victim statement, and you get to understand the background behind it before you get to hear the nitty gritties.
In the fall of 2024, Davis and I formalized a partnership. Choice Press LLC was incorporated in Wyoming. Davis held 60% membership interest. I held 40%, with a dedicated track to 51%. Davis told me he wanted the new company to ultimately be mine, and that he wanted me to earn my way to that majority ownership stake. He contributed the initial capital. I contributed everything else. I want to be direct about this. Davis was minimally involved in the company's day-to-day operations. The ideas, the publishing, the production, the author stewardship, that was my work, built on what I had developed previously and through my graduate school training. I did not arrive at Choice Press LLC as a student. I arrived as a practitioner and a professional.
So basically, you would think that Stephen Davis, what I'm getting from this, is actually a silent partner and not doing all the work. It sounds like the 40% shareholder is the one that's running the company.
I believed we were doing good. We developed empathetic author relationships. We stewarded their voices carefully onto the page. We donated to charity, and even helped produce an empowering comic book created by the teenage son of Goliath Ventures CEO Christopher Delgado, a project designed to raise autism awareness. I believed in the mission. I am telling you this because I need you to understand what it felt like when the other asteroid struck.
Now, this part that gets me though, and I'll speak as I go through this, they donated to charities. Did Goliath Ventures donate to charities? Do you see them using the same formulas, same patterns? I'm not saying that Choice Press is running a Ponzi scheme, but I'm saying that what he's learnt from marketing by association to Goliath Ventures, there's always patterns and there's overlaps. And it just shows you how unoriginal Steve Davis really is. He was really led by his connection to Goliath Ventures. Remember, when he first met Goliath Ventures, he had no money. Now he does, theoretically. Well, not really. He's lost it all. Anyway, let's not get on that track.
The Revelations. In November 2025, published reporting identified Davis as Director of Administration at Goliath Ventures Inc. Federal prosecutors would later allege that Goliath operated a $328 million Ponzi scheme. On February 24, 2026, the U.S. Department of Justice arrested Christopher Delgado on wire fraud and money laundering charges. That arrest is a matter of public federal record. When I asked Davis directly whether allegations were true, he told me via text message, "You're good, dude. It's all BS." He urged me to help him contact a major business publication to get ahead of it.
Right, as we mentioned in the story, it's all bullshit, dude. So how do you think so this is great because I made an accusation when I was reading the blog that because I've forgotten your guy's name now. Jonathan? Is it Jonathan? Joseph. Because Joseph's name was at the bottom of the article, he was asked to publish it. It doesn't seem that way.
I declined. What I learned in the weeks and months that followed I cannot unlearn. I thought back on my family's previous interactions with Davis and my own. With newly awakened eyes, Davis had solicited my brother, the same man whose recovery story I had published, who had trusted Davis as I had, into Goliath Ventures. He had solicited my parents, including my father, a fellow firefighter who served alongside Davis and trusted him with his life. They sustained financial harm. Davis had also approached my wife and me, as well as my other brother, a United States Marine who had received a financial settlement following the same 2020 accident. That money represented something irreplaceable.
Oh my God. Yeah, I said I hadn't read this and I didn't want to read it because I wanted to see how I read. So these guys Steve Davis is a predator. He was going after everybody and trying to get them into Goliath Ventures. Do you see what these guys are? And I call them co-conspirators. And it puts it puts me out there on the limb as well, because I might get a lawsuit from Steve Davis, and he'll probably be telling me I'm going to take Danny to the cleaners because he's saying that I was a co-conspirator. Bring it on, brother. Your actions show that you were going after everybody for your boyfriend, Christopher Delgado. You were collecting victims for Christopher. And at the end of the day, Steve Davis, you were just a victim. I might leave that one on there, Rich.
Amber and I declined to invest in Goliath Ventures. I am grateful every day that we did. I am not asserting that Davis has been charged with a crime. I do not know what Davis knew or knows about the legitimacy of the federal investigation. What I am saying is that the man we trusted like family actively sought to draw that family into a venture that federal prosecutors describe as a fraud, and that when I asked him directly whether that venture was legitimate, he told me it was. I believe Davis was, at one point, a genuinely good man. I believe his association with and loyalty to Goliath Ventures changed him in ways I cannot fully account for or understand. That is my opinion, and I harbor it with sorrow much more than anger.
Yeah. Hold up. This one first. Thanks, Rich. I know you want to have a two. I just want to get this one. Lost my train of thought now. I was not that it has been charged with a crime. Yeah, I'm enjoying this. I just want to get this one off my belt, and let's listen.
The fracture of us I once witnessed Davis, during a sales call, encourage a prospective client, a man who described himself as having very little, and who was supporting a wife and child on a small income, to consider leveraging his home equity to fund our publishing services. I raised this concern with Davis directly. The response I received did not reassure me. I believed that solicitation was not ethical, and I believed the association between Choice Press LLC and Goliath Ventures Incorporated was not ethical. My grandfather was an ethical businessman. How could I continue in this partnership?
I think it's there's a couple of things that really I like so far about this is ethics. I like to think that ethics has got a lot to do with business, and being ethical is a nice thing to have under your belt as a human. Being unethical is hard for me to walk by. No doubt you're feeling the same.
In early 2026, I submitted a formal withdrawal memorandum stating my intent to depart from Choice Press LLC. I offered an orderly wind down of our business relationship to finish out every author contract to the same degree of professionalism I always give. I expected a gentle and understanding response.
Bet you didn't, because he's been tainted with unethics in his life.
What followed instead was a months-long escalation of shifting financial demands, retroactive compensation disputes, and threatening legal pressure. Davis unilaterally froze company payments to me. He demanded personal financial and phone records that had no legitimate bearing on company operations. He accused me of misappropriating company funds. He invoked provisions of our operating agreement in ways that, in my opinion and in the opinion of my legal counsel, directly contradicted Wyoming limited liability company law. I documented everything.
Yeah. I always, when I hear the word Wyoming, I have no respect for Wyoming. Hey, look, we've got you in the chat room there, mate. We can see what you're saying. The Department of Justice said Christopher has not been formally charged. Geez. So what's your point there? Do you think he's an innocent man, do you? And you think that there's $328 million worth of investors' funds that have been spent on sports cars, Rolex watches, two $850,000 cars in Dubai, apparently, two apartments, a $5 billion Christmas party, and you're alleging in the chat room there that Christopher has not been indicted yet, but he is at home in his $8.5 million house with an ankle bracelet on for no reason. And you're hoping that Jonathan Mason, which is probably you, that is actually right and claims there's $1 billion worth of crypto tied up that's spread between 6 different wallet addresses, and you guys don't know the difference between an exchange wallet address versus a tracked and traced wallet address. So we've got all the wallet addresses of all the money that's been going in and out of Goliath Ventures. And we've even got, wallet addresses of people we can't tell you. And we've monitored it. We've got crypto geniuses that go through the crypto wallets. And if that is the case, that everyone's just got it wrong, then do the right thing and put a lot of people out of their misery before they might even die by suicide because of the depression that they're in at the moment, realizing that all their 401k and everything's gone. And give us the wallet addresses that you claim that there is still there, so that we can see whether it's an exchange wallet, which you don't know what one is because you've said in your own video, and give us that wallet address and put everyone out of their misery rather than being in my chat room trying to claim there's a smidgen of a chance that Christopher's an innocent man. In the meantime, remember, Christopher helped with the investigation at least 3 or 4 weeks before he walked into the courtroom and handed himself in. Also, remember that we were aware that JP Morgan's bank accounts were being subpoenaed in September. And also remember the Bank of America bank accounts. Well, we reported the transactions that were going into those bank accounts, and the Bank of America closed down those bank accounts because of the dubious transactions that were coming and going out of those bank accounts. Put all that together without the American government charging Christopher with a $328 million Ponzi scheme, and then sit there in the chat room saying that he hasn't been charged or indicted yet. What do you think they're doing, mate? They're making sure that that bastard is going to be locked up for over 30 years. And they're also putting together cases for all the co-conspirators who are in the chat room trying to claim their innocence. Anyway, I diverse. Let's go back to this beautiful statement from some brave individual that's showing you the dirty tactics of people like Steve Davis.
The dissociation. On March 13, 2026, I formally dissociated from Choice Press LLC pursuant to Wyoming law. Despite what I experienced as intense and escalating pressure from Davis, I prepared a complete operational handoff. All author project files, vendor contacts, platform credentials, outstanding receivables, and production documentation. I shipped Davis's own books back to him, carefully packed, with tracking numbers provided. I fulfilled every obligation I had to the company and every author in my care. In the weeks after my departure, multiple clients the company had served also departed. I did not solicit them. I did not influence their choices. I will let that speak for itself.
Wow, that's amazing. And I feel for this this person, because what it actually shows is this was more than just a company. It was a carrot where they were told that this could be a legacy project, and this was just the beginning. At the end of the day, they would have control of the company, even though they were only 40% holder. And it did seem like Jonathan, who had all the control, not Jonathan, sorry, Steve and Davis had all the control of the company, who I can't tell you some of the things I know, but alpha mentality and everything that the alpha project that they had, the way they gaslight people into making decisions was all employed on this, the pressure they put on this individual. This is a very brave individual who's wrote this, and we're going to carry on. I've got to
What has
duck off
happened
soon.
since my wife Amber and I wanted to move on? We traveled to pursue new, regular employment, an opportunity that represented stability and a genuine fresh start. We were prepared to leave all of this behind us. Davis, in my opinion, made that impossible.
Yeah, he would have. Now, just in the chat room, because we're getting a few people here, you're saying that KB Podcaster is innocent. Well, I think everyone that sits here and promotes somebody without doing due diligence need to be scrutinized. Now, I can't say whether he's innocent or not innocent. And he will probably get away with hosting multiple podcasts endorsing what I call bad behavior. Now, KB might be a nice guy. It doesn't matter. He might have made a mistake, but we've also given him the opportunity to talk to us and tell us why he's now showing remorse for his connection or promotion of Goliath Ventures. And we don't get it. So it's always open. If anybody wants to come on my lives, and I say this over and over again, and explain why they believe they were a victim or victimized or used and misled by Goliath Ventures, or anybody Imagine me interviewing Christopher, Tomo, Steve Davis, Steve Banzik, whatever his name is, Mike. Imagine me interviewing all the 27 co-conspirators of Goliath Ventures and then say that I did not have any, I'm innocent. Endorsing bad behaviour is not innocence from my perspective. You can say he's innocent and he's as dumb as a brick shed, or, it doesn't have an IQ in his brain to identify being used and keep interviewing people. But when you it's called willful blindness. And if you're just going to say to people, oh, he's innocent, then give the receipts, because the receipts show at the moment that he interviewed every single person that I can think of, including Gary Rice, the videographer, and they're all in the same mishput together. They're all under the same teepee. They're all endorsed. You saw Raising Alphas. You saw their YouTube channel. You saw their Instagram. All the Goliath boys are in there. And then you go to KB's YouTube, and there he is. All the Goliath boys are in there. And then they go to other YouTubers. I think there's another YouTuber out there which I can't think of. And they're all in there interviewing each other. And it's like a big washing machine of fraud. Now, just because you're in the same washing machine and you want to sit here and say, I'm not guilty, I'm a victim, good on you. You can say whatever you like. But sometimes your association speaks for itself. Now, my mother used to say, bad association spoils useful habits. I think it's in the Bible, that. And it's true. So KB, is he an innocent victim? Is he 100% not guilty of endorsing Goliath Ventures? Answer that in the chat room.
Since my dissociation, Davis has made statements to people in my professional network that I believe to be false and defamatory, including allegations of financial misconduct that I categorically deny and for which no credible evidence exists. My wife received direct personal contact from Davis in deliberate circumvention of the formal correspondence channel my attorney and I had established. Certified mail arrived at our personal home address on letterhead bearing a company name that does not correspond to any registered legal entity, and which bears a close resemblance to the separately incorporated Choice Publications, my grandfather's company.
An Instagram account believed to be associated with Davis began monitoring my personal profile and his wife. I have documented this. Look, I can't tell you what I'm thinking, but if you are more than welcome to put in the chat room that Steve Davis is an innocent person. But the receipts speak for themselves. We have done a deep investigation since the 1st of September. We've got 330 people in our database, persons of interest. The person that wrote this is not in our database. They go after people. They gaslight people. They put pressure on people. They stalk people. That's my opinion. I've seen it firsthand. They use pack mentality, otherwise known as alpha mentality, and they put pressure on people. They intimidate people. They talk about lawsuits. I've had 7 lawsuits last year and this year where people just do it to stop me from telling the truth.
I am aware that Davis had presented at least one individual with a publishing rights exit agreement containing a provision that would have barred that person from working in any capacity with me, by name, despite the fact that there is no non-compete agreement in the Choice Press LLC operating agreement. I regard this, in my opinion, as an attempt at tortious interference with my professional relationships. On April 21, 2026, I appeared in El Paso County District Court to seek a civil protection order. The ex parte request was not granted that day, but the judge stated on the record that she believes I have a strong basis for a civil suit. The formal motion, case number 26C01482, was accepted for filing.
Brilliant. Well done. And so brave are these people. And these co-conspirators of Goliath Ventures. This isn't the first rodeo for their actions after the event. They need to be stopped. And I've seen all the documents I can't show you,
Most recently, Davis retained legal counsel, Haggard and Haggard, PLLC,
Haggard
who
and Haggard.
delivered a formal demand letter asserting claims that, in my opinion and the opinion of my counsel, have no legitimate legal foundation. I note this not as a complaint, but as documentation. This is the pattern.
Yeah, there's lots of comments in the chat room, which I do have auto play. When you're watching this on the rerun, you will be able to actually read the comments in the chat room. And we've actually got quite an interesting, I have to go off for, it's Wednesday here in New Zealand, and I'm going for a run tonight. I'm taking the dog for a walk at the same time. But there's a lot of passionate people in here, a lot of upset people, for the use of a better word, a lot of emotion in here. So why is Lawrence speaking out? Let's have a listen.
Why I am speaking out. The first, I'm not writing this as a victim. I am writing this as someone who built something real, who honored every commitment, and who watched a man he trusted dismantle what they built together, in my opinion, out of self-preservation and misdirected loyalty. I am writing this because I know there are others. I have watched people place their trust in Stephen Davis, their savings, their pensions, their stories, their futures, and I have watched what happened next. If this account helps even one person make a more informed decision, it is worth the risk of telling it. My brother taught me that.
Yeah, I hear you, mate. Steve Davis. Are you watching this going, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that? Or are you watching this with an open heart and go, I've stuffed up. I've made the wrong decisions. Or do you still have that alpha mentality that you preached with the company that you used to run, where the co-founder was Christopher Delgado? The co-founder of your brand, Raising Alphas, the co-founder, Christopher Delgado, is literally being charged in connection with a $328 million Ponzi scheme. Are you shitting me? And you still want to keep face? Go down with the ship? Rubbish.
Stephen Davis was once there for my family when we needed a hero. He helped carry us through something devastating. The pain of what he has apparently become, and of how he has treated us since, is something I do not have adequate words for. My brother, the same man Davis had once rallied a neighborhood to support, contacted Davis professionally and gently, asking for his traumatically earned accident settlement money back. Davis responded in writing, I have seen that message with my own eyes. His words were, let me be clear, you knew exactly what you were getting into when you invested. Later, Davis spoke with me directly. In my recollection of that conversation, he described my brother's request as an annoyance, that my brother had frustrated him simply by asking for help.
Oh my God, that's disgusting. I tell you what, though, I have literally heard, we've got insiders inside Goliath Ventures, and they're telling us that when these guys were out there smoking their cigars together, they were talking about how stupid investors were and how silly people were with their money, how easy it was for them to get money off these people. They abused trust, because this is all about building trust with people. And then it's about, I'm not responsible, I'm a victim, I'm in the same boat as you. I've heard it for the last 5 years. My brother's response, in contrast, was simple. He said, I hope he will be Chief Stevens Davis. I hope he will be Chief Davis one day. Hold on, I have to read that. My brother's response, in contrast, was simple. He said, let's get this right.
My brother's response, in contrast, was simple. He said, I hope he will be Chief Stephen Davis again one day. I hope that too.
He will be Chief. Oh, I see what that is. I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that. So basically what he's saying is that the man that Steve Davis was has now been tarnished by Goliath Ventures and the money that he's stolen from mum and dad investors. And he's hoping that Steve Davis will show some remorse. And I get that. I haven't lost hope with anybody that's been associated with Christopher Delgado. But I have lost hope with anybody that claims that Christopher Delgado was acting alone. There's no evidence of that whatsoever. And that kind of hurts in a way. Now, I'm going to show you a picture, which I put up all the time. And it's really going to show you what I see. Now, I'm just going to bring this into the screen. Now, this is the list of co-conspirators. And before I get into that, let's just finish off this last bit here. And I will actually read the very end of the file.
Joseph Christian Lawrence is a poet and graduate of the George Washington University Master of Publishing Studies program. He and his wife, Amber Lawrence, reside in Colorado. He may be reached through his legal counsel. A note on sources. All factual assertions in this account are drawn from contemporaneous documentation including email correspondence, text message records, legal filings, court documents and the public federal record of the U.S. Department of Justice's prosecution of Goliath Ventures Inc. The author retains copies of all referenced materials.
I'm just overwhelmed with the amount of comments. I'm trying to put the comments on the screen, so you might not believe this, but I actually watch my own videos at night time. I go to bed late. I learn from the way I conduct myself online. The comments I'm seeing here in the chat room are not messages of hate. They're messages of understanding, compassion, disbelief. What world are we living in now? I mean, these guys in these photos that I've got behind me now, are these people that you go out drinking with? Are these people that you associate with? Are these people that you would loan money to? Have these people got any credibility? Like gangs, cults. Sometimes we have some bad gangs in New Zealand and we think, wouldn't it be cool to put all the gangs together and let them fight it out? Can you imagine if I was running a TV program and I decided to put all these people in one room and basically read a summary of what's just happened with their involvement with Goliath Ventures? Do you think that these guys would be pointing the finger at themselves? Or do you think they would be all pointing it at Chris? Do you think they would sit there and go, we've destroyed many people's lives? Do you think they'd all be trying to keep face? And let's say these men in these photos actually use their reputations to build trust with people who invested their life savings with a too good to be true opportunity. And sure, there may be some hardships they may actually express to us that they are sorry for what they've done. In my world, accountability is something I seek every day. We have got a file on every single one of these. I've even written a blog basically writing out every single person's involvement with Goliath Ventures. I'll finish it one day. It'll probably be a book, maybe a movie. Would that be cool? But everyone in these pictures, I haven't just picked out of 330 persons of interest and thought, here's 27 people. Every single person in these photos has had an active involvement in promoting Goliath Ventures. They haven't shown any remorse for their activity. In fact, they taunt me and call me names. And it's kind of funny. Why is it that they don't acknowledge wrongdoing? So in the chat room today, we've had a lot of people saying that Christopher hasn't been indicted yet. So when Christopher does get indicted, because we've got other people that we've chased down and they have been indicted, do you know what happens? They shut up because they've got nothing left to say. If I had found myself in the same situation as these individuals, maybe life is sad, maybe times are hard, the economy's down, and all of a sudden I met this guy that had more money than a bull could shit. And I thought, well, if I hang out with him, some of his money may rub off on me. So I started getting inside his Lear jets and his fancy sports cars, and I started mimicking everything he was doing. I went along to the big flash events that he was running. And then I needed to tell my friends and family about the wonderful things that he was doing and told them that they want a piece of this pie, they should sign up. And then everybody that I signed up under my name, I got a reward for it. Nick Petrillo, for example. Nick Petrillo found who might even be the instigator behind all this, if I'm saying that word right. Nick Petrillo has 900 people that trusted Nick Petrillo and signed up for Goliath Ventures. Nick Petrillo went to court and said he wants $40 million from Christopher because he's failed his contractual obligations. Incredible. And then you've got people like Punic Shaw, who signed up 500 people. Can you imagine 500 families out there now thinking, oh my God, it's a scam. We've mortgaged our house. We've loaned money from our businesses because the dividends that we were getting were helping sustain our business at the time. Can you imagine 500 people now struggling with their future, with their businesses, because one person decided to recommend Christopher Delgado? Where does the accountability stop? It's pretty obvious. The co-conspirators need to be accountable. This is a series that we're going to do. There will be a follow-up on Steve Davis, and we will definitely be showing you the receipts of his activities, the businesses that he set up, the people whose names are on those businesses, the properties he's purchased, the timelines he's purchased, the everything. It may not be for a few weeks because we want to make sure we've got the information correct. Now, this is where you can play an active part. I know there's a lot of people that invested in Goliath Ventures. I think we've got 340 plus people out of the 2,000 that could have invested in Goliath Ventures. I get messages on a daily basis from people telling me that thank you for joining, Amber. You can click the join button under the video, and you can also buy us some coffees on dehec.com. And I'm not doing this for the money, but I don't get paid millions of dollars for doing these videos. And I do appreciate any support people can give me. But my point is, we want you guys to speak up. We just had Joseph Lawrence give us a statement. He's put himself out there. We've already seen that they are trying to get some protection from the threats that they're getting from Stephen Davis. Don't let these guys intimidate you guys. Let's speak up as a unit. We've got ways where you can provide information that's still relevant to our investigation. This investigation is not over. It's just beginning. And we want every co-conspirator to be accountable for their actions. Now, I haven't got time to do anything else today because I'm going to finish up and I'm going to relax for the next hour, getting myself to my running event. And I just want to thank everyone for contributing to this blog. We value your comments, good or bad, but rather than throwing worthless comments and a theory, back it up with receipts, because this blog was all about receipts, and receipts speak louder than feelings or points of views or beliefs, because there's no way these co-conspirators are going to get away with what they've done to mum and dad investors. Not on my watch, not on my Avengers watch. We'll see you guys in the next video. See you guys.